The rain fell like small daggers against my skin as I stood in the clearing, my threadbare dress offering little protection against the autumn chill. The scent of wet earth and pine needles filled my nostrils, mingling with something else, something wild and dangerous that hung in the air like a promise. Around me, the members of my village formed a circle, their faces a blur of feigned sympathy and poorly disguised relief. None would meet my gaze directly. Not today. "Elizabeth," my father said, his voice cracking slightly as he approached. The silver pocket watch he always carried, my grandfather's most prized possession, glinted dully in his palm as he nervously thumbed its worn surface. It's time. That watch had been my moral compass since childhood. Grandfather had told me the timepiece represented responsibility, duty to family above all else. Time waits for no one, he'd say, and neither does obligation. How ironic that my father would clutch it now, as if seeking absolution for what he was about to do. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. The debt my parents owed was substantial, enough to ruin not just them, but our entire community. The neighboring pack of shifters had made their terms clear: payment in full or payment in blood. My father, ever the pragmatist, had found a third option: payment in flesh. My flesh. Mother stepped forward, pressing something cool into my palm, a small silver pendant with a wolf etched into its surface. "For protection," she whispered, though we both knew it was merely symbolic. No trinket would protect me from what awaited in the forest. She squeezed my hand once, then stepped back, eyes downcast. She'd already said her goodbyes in private, between sobs and apologies that changed nothing. The village elder cleared his throat. "The Alpha approaches." A hush fell over the gathering as the trees at the edge of the clearing began to sway. No wind disturbed them. Something else moved through the forest. Something powerful. The birds had gone silent. Even the rain seemed to pause, suspended in anticipation. And then he stepped into view. Nothing could have prepared me for the sight of him. Tall and broad-shouldered, he moved with the fluid grace of a predator, each step deliberate and controlled. His face was all sharp angles and shadows, framed by dark hair that fell just past his jawline, but it was his eyes that stole my breath, amber and gold, like sunlight through whiskey, with a darkness behind them that spoke of things I couldn't begin to understand. The Alpha. Beside him walked 4 others, his enforcers, I presumed, each exuding the same dangerous energy, though none matched his intensity. They flanked him like shadows, alert and watchful, their gazes sweeping over the gathered humans with undisguised contempt. My father stepped forward, his shoulders squared in a poor imitation of confidence. "Alpha Reyes," he said, his voice wavering slightly. "We have fulfilled our end of the agreement." The Alpha's gaze slid past my father, as if he were nothing more than an insect, landing instead on me. I felt it like a physical weight, pressing against my chest until I struggled to draw breath. His nostrils flared slightly, and I knew he was scenting me, evaluating his payment like livestock at auction. "This is your offering?" His voice was deep and resonant, carrying easily across the clearing despite its soft volume. There was a hint of an accent I couldn't place, something old and foreign that sent a shiver down my spine. "My daughter," my father confirmed, gesturing toward me as if I needed introduction. "Elizabeth." The Alpha approached slowly, his movements reminiscent of water flowing over stone, smooth, inevitable, and potentially devastating. The others in the clearing seemed to shrink back instinctively, leaving me isolated in a widening circle of empty space. Only my parents remained somewhat close, though even they had taken small steps backward. He circled me once, twice, his gaze assessing. I kept my eyes lowered, my grandfather's lessons on respect echoing in my mind. Never challenge a predator. Never show fear. Somehow I managed to keep my trembling internal, though my heart hammered so loudly I was certain everyone could hear it. "Look at me," he commanded. Slowly I raised my gaze to meet his. Something flickered across his features. Surprise, perhaps, or curiosity. For a heartbeat, the mask of cold indifference slipped, revealing something almost human underneath. Then it was gone, replaced once more by calculated assessment. "You understand the terms?" he asked, addressing me directly for the first time. I nodded, then found my voice. I do. Speak them. I swallowed hard. I am to go with you, to serve your pack as you see fit, in exchange for the forgiveness of my family's debt and the continued protection of this village. A cruel smile curved his lips. Serve. A diplomatic word for what awaits you. A murmur rippled through the gathered villagers, and my mother let out a small, strangled sound. I forced myself to hold his gaze, though every instinct screamed at me to look away, to run, to hide. But there was nowhere to run, no place to hide from creatures who could track a scent for miles, who could outpace the fastest human without breaking a sweat. Do you agree to these terms of your own free will? He asked, his tone making it clear he cared little for my answer. A lie formed on my tongue. Yes, of course. Anything to save my family. But something stopped me. Perhaps it was the weight of my grandfather's watch in my father's hand, the symbol of truth and integrity that had guided me since childhood. Or perhaps it was simply that I refused to begin this new life with a falsehood. No, I said quietly, but I accept them nonetheless. The Alpha's eyebrows rose slightly, the only indication of his surprise. Then he laughed, the sound sharp and without humor. Honesty. Rare among your kind. He extended a hand toward me, palm up. Your belongings. I clutched the small bag that contained everything I'd been allowed to bring. A change of clothes, a hairbrush, the book of poetry my grandmother had given me before she died. The agreement said I could bring. The agreement says what I decide it says, he interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. Your belongings. Reluctantly, I handed over the bag. He passed it to one of his enforcers without looking, his eyes never leaving mine. Then, with deliberate slowness, he reached toward my throat. I flinched, unable to help myself, but he merely hooked one finger beneath the chain that held my mother's pendant. And this? A gift, I whispered. From my mother. For protection. Something like amusement flashed in his eyes. Protection. He rolled the word as if tasting it, then abruptly closed his fist around the pendant. With a sharp tug, he snapped the chain. I gasped as the silver links bit into my skin before giving way. He examined the pendant for a moment, then pocketed it. You won't need trinkets for protection where you're going. You have me for that now. The way he said it made it clear that he might well be what I needed protection from. Without warning, he reached out again, this time grasping my wrist. His touch sent an electric shock through my system, hot and cold at once, painful and something else I couldn't identify. His eyes widened fractionally, and I knew he'd felt it too. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The rain began to fall more heavily, plastering my light blonde hair to my face and neck. His grip on my wrist tightened, then abruptly released, as if my skin had burned him. Interesting, he murmured. So quietly I almost missed it beneath the patter of rainfall. He stepped back, addressing the gathered villagers without looking away from me. The debt is paid. Our agreement stands. This village remains under the protection of my pack. Relief washed over the crowd, audible in their collective exhalation. My parents moved toward me, perhaps to say goodbye, but the Alpha stepped between us, his back to me as he faced them. No more contact, he said flatly. She belongs to the pack now, to me. My father's face crumpled for a moment before he mastered himself. We understand. Do you? The Alpha's voice had dropped to that dangerous register again. She is mine now. Mine to command, to use, to protect or not, as I see fit. If you attempt to contact her, if you cross into pack territory without invitation, the debt returns. With interest. Am I clear? My father nodded stiffly. My mother made no effort to hide her tears now. They flowed freely, mingling with the rain on her cheeks. She mouthed something to me. I love you, perhaps. Or I'm sorry. I couldn't be sure through the curtain of rain that separated us now. The Alpha turned back to me. Time to go. One of his enforcers stepped forward, offering a cloak. The Alpha took it and, in a surprisingly gentle motion, draped it around my shoulders. The heavy fabric was warm and smelled of cedar and something musky. His scent, I realized with a start. The journey is long, he said, his voice neither kind nor cruel now, simply matter of fact. "The rain will only worsen. This will keep you dry." Before I could respond, he turned and began walking toward the forest. The enforcers moved to surround me, not touching, but close enough to prevent any thought of escape. One gestured for me to follow the Alpha. I took one last look at the village, at the only home I'd ever known. My parents stood together now, my father's arm around my mother's shoulders as she wept openly. The others were already dispersing, hurrying back to their homes and their lives, relief evident in their quick steps. I was the sacrifice that ensured their safety, and now that the transaction was complete, they couldn't wait to forget. With a deep breath, I turned away from everything familiar and stepped into the forest after the Alpha. The trees closed around us like a cage, the dense canopy blocking what little daylight remained. Ahead, the Alpha moved with unerring confidence through the gathering darkness, never looking back to see if I followed. I clutched the cloak tighter around me, the unexpected kindness of it a puzzle I couldn't solve. What did it mean that the man, the creature, who had just torn me from my family, would concern himself with keeping me dry? Was it merely a matter of protecting property? Or was there something more to it? The pendant weighed heavy in his pocket, I was sure. My mother's protection. Now his trophy. As the last glimpse of the village disappeared behind us, a strange calm settled over me. There was no going back now, only forward, into the unknown, with a man whose very presence made my skin prickle with both fear and something far more confusing. I wondered, as I followed him deeper into the forest, if he was still thinking about that moment, when our skin had touched, and the strange current that had passed between us. I wondered if it meant anything at all. Or if, like me, it was just another thing he now owned. The journey through the forest was a blur of shadow and silence. We moved swiftly despite the darkness, the Alpha leading with inhuman certainty while I stumbled along behind, guided by the occasional steadying hand of an enforcer when my footing faltered on the slick forest floor. No one spoke. The only sounds were the persistent drumming of rain on leaves and the occasional distant howl that made my blood run cold. Night had fully descended by the time we emerged from the densest part of the forest. The rain had softened to a gentle mist that clung to everything like a second skin, giving the world a dreamlike quality. Ahead, nestled against the side of a mountain, sprawled a massive compound. A strange blend of modern architecture and ancient stone structures that somehow looked both imposing and organic against the wild backdrop. "Welcome to Ravencrest," the Alpha said, pausing at the edge of the tree line. He spoke without turning, as if he sensed my presence behind him rather than saw it. Perhaps he did. "Home of the Silverclaw Pack." Home. The word echoed hollowly in my chest. This place, with its high walls and watchful guards visible even from this distance, would never be home to me. It was a prison at best, a slaughterhouse at worst. "You're afraid?" he stated, finally turning to face me. The moonlight breaking through the clouds caught the amber of his eyes, making them glow with an almost supernatural light. I didn't bother denying it. "Wouldn't you be?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Fear is rational when faced with the unknown, or with predators. He studied my face for a long moment. But not all fear is justified. Before I could decipher his cryptic statement, he turned and continued toward the compound. The gates, massive wooden structures reinforced with iron, swung open at our approach, revealing a courtyard beyond. People moved about inside, their movements pausing as we entered. All eyes turned toward us, toward me. I felt their stares like physical touches. Curious, hostile, assessing. These were not fully human eyes that watched me. Even those in human form carried the wolf in their gaze, predatory, calculating, hungry. The Alpha's hand settled at the small of my back, guiding me forward. I flinched at the contact, that same strange energy crackling between us. If he noticed my reaction, he gave no sign. "My quarters," he said, directing me toward the largest building at the far end of the courtyard. "You'll stay there tonight." A woman stepped forward, blocking our path. Tall and striking, with copper hair that fell in waves to her waist, She carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to power. Her eyes, green as summer leaves, narrowed as they swept over me. "So this is the human offering," she said, her voice musical but cold. "Hardly seems worth the debt, Victor." Victor. So the Alpha had a name. Somehow knowing it made him more real and more frightening. "Your opinion wasn't requested, Serena," Victor replied, his tone dismissive. The woman, Serena, stepped closer, invading my personal space. She inhaled deeply, scenting me as Victor had done earlier. "She smells of fear and—" Her eyes widened slightly before her expression shifted to something calculating. "Interesting. Back away," Victor said, his voice so quiet it was almost a whisper, yet it carried a command that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Now." Serena's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course, Alpha." She stepped back, offering a mocking half-bow before turning her attention back to me. "Welcome to Ravencrest, little human. I do hope you survive the experience." With that, she sauntered away, the crowd parting for her like water around a stone. Several pairs of eyes followed her retreating figure with expressions ranging from admiration to wariness. "Who is she?" I asked, unable to help myself. Victor's jaw tightened. "My sister." The simple statement contained volumes of unspoken history. I sensed a rift there, deep and possibly dangerous. Something to be aware of, I thought. Something that might matter to my survival. We continued across the courtyard, the crowd dispersing as we passed. Some nodded respectfully to Victor. Others simply lowered their eyes. All regarded me with varying degrees of curiosity and distrust. I felt like a lamb that had somehow wandered into a wolf den, which I supposed wasn't far from the truth. Victor led me to the main building and through a set of heavy oak doors. Inside, the contrast with the rustic exterior was stark. Modern furnishings mixed with antique pieces, creating a space that was both luxurious and strangely timeless. A massive stone fireplace dominated one wall, its flames casting dancing shadows across the polished wooden floors. "You'll want to clean up," Victor said, gesturing toward a hallway. "There's a bathroom through there. I've had clothes laid out for you." I hesitated, suddenly very aware of my soaked dress clinging to my body, my hair plastered to my scalp. I must have looked pathetic, standing there dripping on his pristine floor. "Thank you," I managed, the words feeling strange in my mouth. Thanking my captor for basic decency seemed wrong somehow. His eyes lingered on me for a moment longer than necessary. "When you're done, come back here. We need to talk about your position within the pack." My position. As if I had any choice in the matter. Still, I nodded and made my way toward the bathroom, feeling his gaze on my back until I turned the corner. The bathroom was larger than my entire bedroom at home, all sleek marble and gleaming fixtures. A pile of clothes sat folded on a bench, soft-looking pants and a loose sweater, simple but clearly expensive. Nothing like the worn hand-me-downs I'd grown up wearing. I stripped off my wet clothes and stepped into the shower, letting the hot water wash away the physical remnants of my old life. If only it could cleanse away the fear as easily. As the water sluiced over me, I thought of my family, of my father's face as he handed me over, a mixture of shame and relief, of my mother's quiet tears. Had they already pushed me from their minds? Was it easier for them to forget the daughter they had traded away? The pendant Victor had taken from me seemed to burn in my memory. My mother's protection. What had she hoped it would do for me here, among creatures who could tear me apart with their bare hands? When I finally emerged from the bathroom, dressed in the clothes provided, my hair still damp but combed, I found Victor standing by the fireplace. He'd changed as well, into dark pants and a gray sweater that clung to the broad planes of his chest and shoulders. In these more casual clothes, he looked almost human, until you met his eyes. "Better?" he asked, his gaze sweeping over me. I nodded, crossing my arms over my chest defensively. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair opposite the one he now took. It wasn't a request. I perched on the edge of the seat, back straight, hands folded in my lap as my grandmother had taught me. Proper posture in improper circumstances. Victor leaned forward, elbows on knees, studying me with those unnerving amber eyes. "Do you know why you're here, Elizabeth?" "To pay my family's debt," I answered automatically. "Yes, but why you specifically? Why not some other offering? Your village has other young women, I assume." The question caught me off guard. I'd never considered that there might have been options. My parents had simply told me it had to be me. "I don't know," I admitted. Victor's expression remained impassive. "Your father didn't tell you? Tell me what?" He sat back, a small furrow appearing between his brows. "Interesting." He reached into his pocket and pulled out my mother's pendant, turning it over in his fingers. "Do you know what this is?" I shook my head. "Just a family heirloom. My mother said it would protect me." A dry laugh escaped him. "Protection?" "Yes, I suppose in a way that's true." He held the pendant up to the firelight, the silver wolf catching the glow. "This is the symbol of my pack, the silver claw. It's not something humans typically possess." My confusion must have shown on my face, because he continued. "This pendant belonged to a wolf, Elizabeth, a silver claw wolf. Your mother isn't purely human, is she?" The world seemed to tilt beneath me. "What are you talking about? Of course she is. We all are." Victor's expression was pitying now. "No, you're not." He leaned forward again. "Your mother was born to this pack. She fled almost 30 years ago before I became Alpha, when your father's debt came due, and I learned of the connection. Well, let's just say it was an opportunity to reclaim what belongs to the Silver Claw." My mind reeled with the implications. "That's not possible. She would have told me. Would she?" His eyes bored into mine. Would she have told her human husband, her human daughter, that she carried wolf blood? That in the right circumstances, with the right trigger, she could shift forms, that her child might inherit the same ability? I shook my head violently. "No, you're lying." "Am I?" He stood suddenly, moving with that unnatural grace to kneel before me. Before I could react, he took my hand in his. That same electric current surged between us, stronger than before. "Then explain this. Explain why, when I touch you, both wolf and man inside me respond." I tried to pull away, but his grip, while not painful, was unbreakable. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You feel it too. I can see it in your eyes, smell it on your skin." He released me abruptly, standing to pace before the fire. "You're not fully human, Elizabeth. You carry wolf blood. Dormant, perhaps, but present. That's why your father offered you specifically. He knows what you are, or what you might become." "And what is that exactly?" I demanded, finding strength in anger. Victor turned to face me, his expression grave. "Potentially a shifter, one of us." The words hung in the air between us, impossible yet somehow resonating with a truth I'd always sensed but never acknowledged. Strange dreams of running through forests, heightened senses that no one else seemed to share. The way animals sometimes reacted to me with unnatural wariness. "If what you're saying is true," I said slowly, "then why did my mother leave? Why hide what she was?" Victor's face darkened. "That is a long and complicated story. One I don't fully know myself. I was young when she fled, but I do know she was promised to the previous Alpha, my father. Perhaps she didn't want that life, and now you've dragged me back into it." The irony wasn't lost on me. "Is that my position in the pack? To be promised to you as she was to your father?" His jaw tightened. "Things are different now. I am not my father, and yet here I am, taken from my family, told I belong to you. You were payment for a debt," he said coldly. "One your father incurred willingly. If anyone sold you, Elizabeth, it was him." The truth of his words stung. My father had known, he must have known, what I was, what my mother was, and still, he'd handed me over without explanation. "So what happens now?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Victor's expression softened fractionally. "Now, you learn about what you are, about the pack, about our ways." He paused. "And we learn about you, about what you can become. And if I don't want to become anything? If I just want to go home? This is your home now." His tone brooked no argument. "The sooner you accept that, the easier your transition will be." A knock at the door interrupted us. Victor's head turned sharply, nostrils flaring. "Enter," he called. A young man stepped inside, his posture deferential. "Alpha, forgive the interruption. There's been an incident at the southern border. Hunters." Victor's entire demeanor changed in an instant, the brief softness I'd glimpsed vanishing beneath a mask of cold authority. "How many?" "6, maybe 7. They've wounded Elias." A low growl emerged from Victor's throat, so animalistic it sent a wave of goosebumps across my skin. "Gather the enforcers. I'll join you shortly." The young man nodded and withdrew. Victor turned back to me, his expression grim. "I must deal with this. You'll stay here, in these rooms. Do not leave. Do not speak to anyone who may come. Understand?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. He moved to a cabinet against the wall, unlocking it to reveal an array of weapons. He selected a hunting knife, securing it at his belt before turning back to me. "Human hunters occasionally venture into our territory," he explained, perhaps seeing the question in my eyes. "Usually they're simply lost. Sometimes they're looking for game. Rarely, they're looking for us." "And which are these?" I asked. His expression turned dangerous. "That's what I intend to find out." He crossed to where I sat, and before I could react, he pressed something into my palm. My mother's pendant, the chain now repaired. "Keep this with you, always. It marks you as under my protection." The gesture confused me, coming as it did after his revelation about my heritage. "I thought you took it because it was a pack symbol I had no right to." "I took it because I needed to be sure what it was." His fingers lingered on mine for a moment. "Now I'm giving it back because you have every right to it. By blood, if nothing else." With that, he turned and strode toward the door. There he paused, looking back over his shoulder. "We'll continue our conversation when I return. In the meantime, rest. You're safe here." The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me alone with thoughts that whirled like autumn leaves in a storm. "Safe," he'd said. But how could I be safe in a place where everything I'd believed about myself might be a lie? I clutched the pendant, its silver warm from Victor's hand. If what he said was true, if I carried wolf blood, what else had my parents hidden from me? And what would happen when, if, that dormant part of me awakened? Sleep eluded me that night, despite the luxurious bed Victor had shown me to before his departure. I lay awake for hours, staring at the shadowed ceiling, my mother's pendant, no, the pack's symbol, clutched tightly in my palm until the edges left impressions in my skin. My thoughts circled endlessly, examining memories for signs I might have missed. Clues that could have revealed the truth Victor had thrust upon me. Had there been moments when my mother's eyes caught the light a certain way? Times when her hearing seemed too acute, her sense of smell too precise. I remembered how she always seemed to know when storms were coming, hours before the clouds gathered, how she grew restless during full moons, claiming headaches that kept her pacing the floors until dawn. Little things. Things that meant nothing in isolation, but, taken together, painted a picture I'd been too blind to see. Dawn was breaking when I finally heard the main door open and close. Heavy footsteps crossed the living area, paused, then approached my room. A soft knock followed. "Elizabeth." Victor's voice, lower than usual, rough around the edges. "Are you awake?" I sat up, pulling the blankets to my chest. "Yes." The door opened slowly. Victor stood in the threshold, his imposing frame nearly filling the doorway. In the soft morning light, I could see smudges of dirt on his face and clothes, a tear in the sleeve of his sweater. There was something dark on his hands that I suspected wasn't soil. "The hunters?" I asked quietly. His expression was unreadable. "Dealt with." I swallowed hard, not wanting to know what "dealt with" entailed. "Was anyone hurt?" "Your pack member, Elias?" Something flickered in Victor's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that I would ask after a werewolf's welfare. "He'll recover. Werewolves heal quickly. And the hunters?" Victor's gaze hardened. "They won't trouble us again." I shivered, though the room was warm. Whatever had happened in the forest last night, I suspected it had been brutal. Victor moved into the room, stopping at the foot of my bed. "You should know," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "They weren't simply hunting game. They carried silver ammunition, wolfsbane. They knew what they were looking for. Werewolves," I whispered. He nodded once, sharply. "Your kind has hunted mine for centuries. It's why we keep to ourselves, why we guard our territory so fiercely." His eyes met mine. "Why your mother might have chosen to hide what she was, even from her own daughter." It made a terrible kind of sense. If my mother had fled the pack, hidden her nature to live among humans, she would have had every reason to conceal the truth. Not just from the world, but from me. What if I had revealed her secret unintentionally? What if I had shown signs of her heritage that might have drawn attention? "I need to wash," Victor said, breaking into my thoughts. "Then we have much to discuss. There will be a pack gathering tonight. You should be prepared." With that, he left, closing the door softly behind him. I listened to his retreating footsteps, then the sound of water running in a distant part of the house. Only then did I allow myself to release the breath I'd been holding. A pack gathering. The thought sent a tremor through me. How would they receive me? This half-human with dormant wolf blood who had been brought among them as payment for a debt. Would they see me as Victor seemed to, a lost member of their kind? Or as something lesser, something to be despised or pitied? I rose from the bed, moving to the window. Ravencrest looked different in daylight, less forbidding, more like a small, self-contained village. People moved through the courtyard below, going about their morning routines. Some were clearly returning from night patrols, others just beginning their day. From this distance, they looked perfectly human. A knock at the outer door of the suite drew my attention. After a moment's hesitation, I moved through the bedroom and into the main living area. Victor was still in the shower. I could hear the water running. Should I answer? He'd told me not to speak to anyone. But that was last night, during a potential crisis. The knock came again, more insistent. Taking a deep breath, I approached the door. "Who is it?" I called, keeping my voice steady. "Mira. I've brought breakfast and clothes for the gathering tonight." A woman's voice, young and without the coldness I'd heard from Serena. Still, I hesitated. "The Alpha asked me to come," the voice added, as if sensing my uncertainty. "I'm his housekeeper." Slowly, I opened the door. A young woman stood in the hallway, perhaps a few years older than my 22 years. She balanced a large tray in her hands, and over her arm hung what looked like garment bags. Her heart-shaped face was framed by dark curls, her eyes a warm brown that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. "You must be Elizabeth," she said. "May I come in?" I stepped aside, allowing her to enter. She moved with easy confidence to the dining table, setting down the tray before turning back to me. "I'm Mira," she said, extending a hand. "Victor's cousin, though that's not something we advertise much." I shook her hand cautiously. Her skin was warm, her grip firm, but without the electric current I'd felt when Victor touched me. "You're a werewolf?" "Yes." She smiled, showing slightly pointed canines. "Though not as scary as some, I promise." There was something immediately likable about Mira, an openness that contrasted sharply with the guarded expressions I'd seen on other pack members. She gestured to the tray. "You must be hungry. Victor mentioned you didn't eat much last night." The tray held an assortment of fresh fruits, pastries, and what smelled like freshly brewed coffee. My stomach rumbled in response, and I realized I hadn't eaten since before leaving my village. "Thank you," I said, taking a seat at the table. Mira hung the garment bags over the back of a chair and joined me, pouring coffee for us both. "So," she said after a moment, "how are you holding up? It must be a lot to take in." I appreciated her directness. "It's overwhelming. Yesterday morning I was a village girl with ordinary human parents. Now I'm apparently half werewolf, living among a pack that includes my mother's former people, and attending some kind of gathering tonight." Mira nodded sympathetically. "Victor told me about your mother. That can't be easy to hear. Did you know her?" I asked, suddenly eager for any information. Mira shook her head. "I was just a child when she left. But I remember the stories. She was controversial." "What do you mean?" Mira glanced toward the bathroom door, clearly checking that Victor was still occupied. She was promised to the previous alpha, Victor's father, but she fell in love with someone else. A human, I assume your father. When she tried to break the arrangement, there was conflict. She fled during the chaos. What kind of conflict? I pressed. Mira's expression grew troubled, the kind that ends with blood spilled. I don't know the details. The adults didn't speak of it around the young. But it changed things here, changed Victor's father, made him harder, crueler. She looked at me intently. It's why many in the pack are wary of you. They fear history repeating itself. The weight of this legacy settled over me like a shroud. No wonder some had looked at me with suspicion bordering on hostility. To them, I was the daughter of a woman who had rejected their ways, possibly even caused deaths in her escape. And Victor? I asked quietly. What does he think of all this? Mira's expression softened. Victor is complicated. He's not his father. When he became Alpha 5 years ago, after his father's death, many things changed for the better. But he carries his own scars from the past. The bathroom door opened then, ending our conversation. Victor emerged, dressed in fresh clothes, his hair still damp. His eyes narrowed slightly when he saw Mira at the table with me. I see you two have met, he said, his tone carefully neutral. Mira rose smoothly. I brought breakfast as requested and clothes for tonight. She nodded to the garment bags. The blue one is for Elizabeth. I thought the color would complement her eyes and hair. Victor nodded. Thank you, Mira. There was genuine warmth in his voice when he addressed his cousin, the first real warmth I'd heard from him. It gave me hope that perhaps there was more to the Alpha than the cold, commanding presence I'd witnessed thus far. I should get back to my duties, Mira said. She turned to me with a smile. It was lovely meeting you, Elizabeth. I'm sure we'll see more of each other. After she left, Victor took her place at the table, helping himself to coffee, but nothing else. Up close, I could see the fatigue etched in the lines around his eyes, the tension he carried in his shoulders. You look tired, I said before I could stop myself. His eyebrows rose slightly. It was a long night. Did you have to kill them? The hunters? Victor set down his cup, his expression grave. Would it matter to you if I had? I considered the question honestly. Yes, I finally said. It would matter. Why? They were a threat to my pack. To you, potentially, if what I suspect about your heritage is true. Because taking a life should always matter, I replied. It should never be easy, never be without consequence, even when it's necessary. Victor studied me for a long moment, his amber eyes unreadable. An interesting perspective from someone whose own family traded her away like livestock. The barb struck home, but I refused to flinch. My parents made their choice, a terrible one. That doesn't mean I have to abandon everything they taught me about right and wrong. A smile ghosted across his lips. Not mocking this time, but something closer to genuine amusement. You have spirit, Elizabeth. That will serve you well here. His expression grew serious again. To answer your question, no, I did not kill them. I could have, perhaps should have. But I chose another path. They've been persuaded to forget what they saw, and to avoid our territory in the future. I blinked in surprise. You can do that? Make people forget? Not me personally, but we have members with certain abilities. Mind manipulation is rare, but useful in situations like this. The casual way he spoke of altering human minds sent a chill through me. What other abilities might werewolves possess that I knew nothing about? What might I possess if what he said about my heritage was true? About tonight, Victor said, changing the subject. The gathering is important. It's a full moon, which means many pack members will shift. It's also when I formally introduce you to the pack. As what, exactly? His eyes met mine. As a lost daughter of the Silverclaw, returned to us. But I don't even know if what you've told me is true. I've never shifted, never felt anything that would indicate I'm not fully human. The blood can lie dormant for generations, Victor explained, especially in female lines. Sometimes it needs a trigger. What kind of trigger? He hesitated, an unusual display of uncertainty from the otherwise confident Alpha. It varies. Strong emotion, Danger, sometimes. He cleared his throat. Sometimes the presence of a compatible mate. Heat rushed to my cheeks at the implication. Is that why you think I might shift? Because of you? Victor's expression hardened. I didn't say that. He stood abruptly. The gathering begins at sunset. Mira has brought appropriate attire. I suggest you rest today. The night will be long. With that, he strode from the room, leaving me with more questions than answers and a growing sense that there were currents running beneath the surface of Ravencrest that I was only beginning to perceive. I spent the day exploring Victor's quarters, which proved to be far more extensive than I'd initially realized. Beyond the main living area and the bedroom I'd been given, there was a study lined with books, a smaller room that appeared to be a meditation space, and a kitchen that, while fully equipped, showed signs of minimal use. The books in the study caught my attention. Ancient-looking tomes on werewolf lore and history, modern volumes on pack dynamics, even a section of human literature that included some of my own favorites. I selected one, a collection of poems I'd read as a child, and spent several hours losing myself in familiar verses, finding comfort in words that had traveled with me from my old life to this strange new one. As sunset approached, I reluctantly set aside the book and turned my attention to preparing for the gathering. In the garment bag, I found a dress of midnight blue silk that flowed like water through my fingers. It was simple in design, but clearly expensive, with delicate silver embroidery at the hem and neckline, tiny wolves running through stylized forests, a more subtle version of the pendant I now wore around my neck. I dressed carefully, grateful for the privacy. The dress fit as if made for me, highlighting the curves of my body while maintaining an elegance that felt appropriate for a formal gathering. I brushed my blonde hair until it shone, letting it fall loose down my back. My reflection in the mirror startled me. I looked different somehow, more refined, less the village girl and more something else. Someone who might belong in this world of ancient power and shifting forms. A knock at the door pulled me from my contemplation. Victor entered without waiting for a response, then stopped abruptly when he saw me. He too had changed for the gathering. Gone were the casual clothes of earlier, replaced by what could only be described as formal attire fit for an alpha, dark pants and a deep burgundy shirt under a black jacket embroidered with the same wolf motif that adorned my dress. A silver chain at his neck held a larger version of the pendant I wore. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. His eyes traveled slowly from my face down the length of my body, then back up again. Something flickered in their amber depths. Appreciation, certainly, but also a hunger that made my pulse quicken. You look... He seemed to search for the right word. Appropriate. I might have laughed at the understatement if not for the intensity of his gaze, which conveyed far more than his words. Thank you. So do you. Victor cleared his throat. It's time. The pack is gathering. He extended a hand toward me. Are you ready? No, I thought. How could I be ready for any of this? But I straightened my shoulders, lifted my chin, and placed my hand in his. That now familiar current passed between us. Stronger than before. As ready as I'll ever be, I said softly. His fingers closed around mine, warm and surprisingly gentle. Stay close to me, he said, leading me toward the door. No matter what happens tonight, stay close. The warning in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, as we stepped out into the gathering twilight, I felt something new stirring within me, something wild and ancient that resonated with the energy of the pack gathering below. Something that, perhaps, had been sleeping inside me all along, waiting for this night, this place, this man to awaken it. The central courtyard of Ravencrest had been transformed. Torches lined the perimeter, their flames dancing in the evening breeze. A massive bonfire blazed at the center, sending sparks spiraling toward the darkening sky. Around it, members of the Silverclaw pack had gathered, some already seated on logs arranged in concentric circles, others standing in small groups, conversations hushing as Victor and I appeared at the entrance to his quarters. All eyes turned to us. I felt the weight of their collective gaze like a physical pressure against my skin. Victor's hand tightened around mine, a silent reminder of his earlier instruction. Stay close. As we descended the stone steps leading to the courtyard, the crowd parted before us. Some bowed their heads slightly as Victor passed. Others merely watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. I tried to keep my head high, my steps measured despite the thundering of my heart. At the far side of the bonfire stood a raised platform of stone, ancient-looking, weathered by countless seasons. Victor led me toward it, his posture straight and proud, every inch the alpha commanding respect. As we approached, I spotted Serena standing near the platform, her copper hair gleaming like fire in the torchlight. Her green eyes narrowed when she saw me, her lips curving in a smile that held no warmth. Victor stopped before the platform, turning to face the gathered pack. Only then did he release my hand, leaving me feeling strangely vulnerable, despite his continued presence beside me. "Silverclaw," he called, his voice carrying easily across the courtyard. "Tonight we gather under the full moon, as we have for generations before us, and will for generations to come." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. "Tonight is special," Victor continued. "For the first time in many years, blood returns to us that we thought lost." He turned slightly toward me. "This is Elizabeth, daughter of Lillian, who left our pack nearly 30 years ago." The murmur grew louder, less approving. I heard whispers, catching fragments. "Traitor's daughter. Human taint. Why is she here?" Victor raised a hand, and silence fell instantly. Lillian's departure was before my time as Alpha. The circumstances were complex, but the blood she carried, our blood, lives on in her daughter. Elizabeth comes to us not only as payment for a debt, but as a daughter of the Silverclaw, returned to her rightful place. From the corner of my eye, I saw Serena step forward. "Brother," she said, her musical voice carrying an edge. "You speak of blood, yet this girl shows no signs of our nature. She stands before us, human in all ways that matter." Victor's jaw tightened. "The blood can lie dormant, as you well know, Serena, or it can be too diluted to matter," she countered. "If she cannot shift, what use is she to the pack? Her usefulness is not your concern," Victor replied, his tone dangerously soft. "She is under my protection." Serena's smile widened, showing teeth that seemed too sharp for a human mouth. "Protection? Or possession? We all know why humans are brought into werewolf packs, brother, especially pretty ones." Heat rushed to my cheeks, partly embarrassment, partly anger at being discussed as if I weren't present. Before I could think better of it, I spoke. "I am standing right here," I said, my voice clearer and stronger than I had expected. "If you have questions about me, perhaps you could address them to me directly." A shocked silence fell over the gathering. Addressing the Alpha's sister in such a manner, especially as an outsider, was clearly not the norm here. Serena's eyes widened momentarily, before narrowing to dangerous slits. "The human has spirit," she said, her tone mocking. "I'll give her that." She stepped closer, moving with predatory grace. "Very well, Elizabeth, daughter of the traitor. What do you bring to our pack? What skills? What strength? What value beyond warming my brother's bed?" "Serena," Victor growled, a warning. I laid a hand on his arm, surprising myself as much as him. "It's all right," I said quietly. Then, louder, addressing Serena. "I bring nothing but myself. I didn't ask to come here. I didn't ask to learn that half my heritage had been hidden from me. But I am here now, and I will not apologize for existing, nor will I beg for acceptance from those who have already decided to hate me for circumstances beyond my control." My words hung in the air. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then, from the back of the gathering, a voice called out, "Let her prove herself. The trial of blood." Others took up the cry. "The trial. The trial." Victor's expression darkened. "No," he said, his voice cutting through the chanting. "The trial is dangerous even for those born to our ways, for one untrained with dormant blood." "Afraid she'll fail, brother?" Serena asked sweetly. "Or afraid she'll succeed and prove to be more than your plaything?" I felt Victor tense beside me, sensed the anger radiating from him in almost palpable waves. "What is this trial?" I asked him quietly. His eyes, when they met mine, held a mixture of anger and concern, an old tradition. seldom used now, a test of courage, strength, and instinct, designed to awaken dormant werewolf blood if it exists. And if it doesn't exist? I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. Then the human usually doesn't survive, he said grimly. The chanting had grown louder. Trial of blood! Trial of blood! Victor turned to face the crowd. Enough! His voice had changed, deeper, more resonant, carrying a power that seemed to vibrate in my bones. The courtyard fell instantly silent. I am Alpha here, he continued, that strange power still echoing in his words. I decide who faces the trial and when. Not you. Not any of you. From the edge of the platform, an older man stepped forward. His hair and beard were silver, his face lined with age, yet he carried himself with dignity and strength. Alpha, he said, his voice respectful but firm. The pack's concerns are valid. If this young woman carries our blood, the trial would reveal it. If not, then questions must be asked about her place among us. Victor's expression softened slightly. Elder Thomas, I understand the tradition, but Elizabeth has had no preparation, no training. To subject her to the trial now would be irresponsible. The elder, Thomas, nodded thoughtfully. Then perhaps a compromise. Give her time to learn our ways, to prepare. Then, when you deem her ready, she may face the trial. Murmurs of approval spread through the gathering. Even Serena seemed mollified by this suggestion, though her smile remained calculating. Victor looked to me, a question in his eyes. The decision, surprisingly, appeared to be mine. I thought of the village I'd left behind, of parents who had traded me away, of a heritage half hidden and half revealed. Whatever waited for me here, trial or no trial, it offered answers I'd never find elsewhere. I accept, I said, loud enough for all to hear. Give me time to prepare, and I will face your trial. A cheer went up from some quarters of the gathering, while others merely watched with narrowed, assessing eyes. Victor's expression was unreadable, but I sensed both approval and concern warring within him. Elder Thomas nodded solemnly. It is decided, then. The human-born daughter of Lillian will be given time to learn our ways. At the next full moon she will face the trial of blood. Victor raised his voice once more. So it will be. Now, as the moon rises, let those who wish to run do so. The rest will feast and celebrate as we have always done. As if on cue, the clouds that had veiled the sky parted, revealing the full moon in all its glory. Its silver light bathed the courtyard, and a change came over many in the gathering. Some doubled over, as if in pain. Others threw back their heads in what looked like ecstasy. Before my astonished eyes, bodies began to shift and change, limbs elongating, faces transforming, clothes tearing as human forms gave way to something else entirely. Werewolves, not the monstrous half-beasts of human legend, but magnificent creatures that seemed to embody the best of both wolf and human. Larger than natural wolves, with intelligent eyes and powerful builds, they moved with a grace that stole my breath. Victor remained unchanged beside me, though I sensed a tension in him, as if he held back his own transformation through sheer force of will. Not all shift during the full moon, he said, noting my questioning glance. Those with greater control can choose when to change forms. Tonight, I remain as I am to host those who do not run. Across the courtyard, most of the shifted wolves were now loping toward the forest edge, obviously eager for the freedom of the wilderness. Among them, I spotted a copper-colored wolf that could only be Serena, larger than many around her, her green eyes unmistakable even in lupine form. As the runners disappeared into the tree line, those remaining, perhaps a third of the pack, still in human form, began to move toward long tables that had been set up at one side of the courtyard, laden with food and drink. Come, Victor said, offering his arm. We should join the feast. I placed my hand on his arm, still trembling slightly from what I'd witnessed. That was incredible. A small smile touched his lips. It is our nature, and perhaps one day, yours. The thought both terrified and exhilarated me. To run with such freedom, to feel the earth beneath paws instead of feet. to experience the world through heightened senses. If it truly was my heritage, could I embrace it? As Victor led me toward the feast, my mind returned to the trial I had agreed to face. "What exactly does the trial of blood entail?" I asked quietly. His expression grew serious. "We'll discuss that tomorrow. Tonight is for celebration." "Celebration of what?" Victor stopped, turning to face me fully. In the moonlight, his amber eyes seemed to glow with an inner fire. "Your return to us," he said softly. "Whether you know it yet or not, Elizabeth, you belong here. I suspected it from the moment I touched you. That current between us is rare, even among werewolves. It suggests compatibility on a level few experience." My breath caught. "What are you saying?" He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from my face with a gentleness that belied his strength. "I'm saying that your mother fled this pack to escape an arranged mating with my father. History has given us a second chance. Not arranged, not forced, but potentially fated." The implication of his words sent a shiver through me, not entirely from fear. "And if I don't want fate to decide for me?" His hand dropped away, but his gaze remained intense. "Then we find another way. I am not my father, Elizabeth. I will not force a bond that is not freely given." He offered his arm again. "Now, shall we join the others? There will be time for serious discussions tomorrow." The feast continued well into the night, a blur of unfamiliar foods, potent drinks, and curious gazes. I sat at Victor's right hand at the main table, a position of honor that wasn't lost on the pack members who watched me with varying degrees of acceptance and suspicion. Elder Tomas sat opposite us, occasionally engaging me in conversation about my village, my upbringing. Careful, I noticed, to avoid direct mentions of my mother. Mira joined us partway through the evening, taking the seat beside me with a warm smile. "You survived Serena's welcome committee, I see," she murmured, soft enough that only I, and presumably Victor, with his enhanced hearing, could catch. "Barely," I replied, grateful for her friendly presence. "The trial of blood," Mira said, her expression growing serious. "That was unexpected. Are you sure you know what you're agreeing to?" "Not in the slightest," I admitted, "but what choice do I have? If I refuse, I'll never be accepted here." Mira glanced at Victor, who was deep in conversation with the elder. "My cousin won't let anything happen to you. That much I'm certain of." I wasn't so sure. Victor had shown me moments of kindness, even gentleness, but I'd also seen the ruthless alpha, putting pack needs above all else. If the trial revealed me to be fully human, without a trace of werewolf blood, what then? As the night progressed, the wolves who had run in the forest began to return, shifting back to human form at the edge of the courtyard, where attendants waited with blankets and robes. Some joined the feast, others, exhausted from their run, retreated to their quarters. Serena was among the last to return, her copper hair wild around her shoulders, her green eyes still holding something of the wolf as she stalked through the remaining revelers. She paused at our table, her gaze fixed on me. "Enjoying your last month as a human, little one?" Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "The trial changes everyone, one way or another." "That's enough, Serena," Victor said, his tone leaving no room for argument. His sister merely laughed, a musical sound at odds with the malice in her expression. "Just making conversation, brother dear. Sleep well, both of you." With that, she sauntered off, several young male werewolves trailing in her wake like devoted acolytes. "Don't let her get to you," Mira whispered. "Serena has always enjoyed intimidation as a hobby." I forced a smile. "I'm beginning to gather that." By the time Victor finally escorted me back to his quarters, the moon was high overhead, bathing Ravencrest in silver light. I was exhausted but too keyed up to sleep, my mind racing with all I'd seen and learned. To my surprise, Victor seemed equally restless. "A nightcap?" he offered, moving to a cabinet and withdrawing a crystal decanter filled with amber liquid. "It might help you sleep." I nodded, sinking into one of the chairs before the fireplace, where embers still glowed. Victor poured 2 glasses, bringing one to me before taking the seat opposite. The liquor burned pleasantly down my throat, warming me from within. "You did well tonight," Victor said after a moment. Many in your position would have cowered before Serena's challenge. Perhaps I'm not as human as we thought, I replied, aiming for lightness but hearing the uncertainty in my own voice. Victor studied me over the rim of his glass. Perhaps not. He set his drink aside, leaning forward. Elizabeth, there's something you should know about the trial. Now you'll tell me? Now I can tell you without the entire pack listening. His expression was grave. The trial of blood isn't merely a test. It's a ritual, ancient, powerful. It's designed to push those with dormant werewolf blood to their limits, forcing the change through a combination of danger, adrenaline, and other factors. What other factors? He hesitated. Proximity to a compatible mate. The presence of one who could potentially bond with the dormant wolf accelerates the process, makes the shift more likely. The implications weren't lost on me. You mean you? Victor didn't deny it. The connection we feel, that current when we touch, suggests compatibility at a primal level. During the trial, I would be present. Close. It would increase your chances of shifting successfully. And if I still can't shift? If my blood is too diluted, as Serena suggested? His eyes held mine, unflinching. Then the danger of the trial would likely prove fatal. The bluntness of his statement sent a chill through me. So I have a month to prepare for either becoming a werewolf or dying in the attempt. Wonderful. There is a third option, Victor said quietly, which is? Leave. Tonight, I could arrange it. Safe passage through pack territory. Enough resources to start somewhere new, somewhere far from here. I stared at him, stunned. You'd let me go? Just like that? Not just like that, he corrected. It would cost me politically within the pack. There would be consequences. But yes, I would let you go, if that's what you truly want. Why? I whispered. After all your talk of blood returning to the pack, of compatibility between us, why offer me freedom now? Victor's expression softened, revealing a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. Because forcing you to stay, to face a trial that might kill you, that makes me no better than those who brought you here against your will in the first place. He leaned closer. I want you to stay, Elizabeth, but I want it to be your choice. The sincerity in his voice touched something within me. Here was a man, a werewolf of immense power, who could command obedience with a look, offering me a choice no one else had bothered to give. It shifted something between us, transforming fear and wariness into something more complex. And if I stay, I said carefully, you'll help me prepare for the trial? Give me a real chance at survival? I'll do more than that, he promised. I'll train you myself, and I'll be there during the trial, ensuring you have every advantage possible. I considered his words, weighing them against all I'd learned in the short time since being brought to Ravencrest. The pendant around my neck seemed suddenly heavier, my mother's legacy, the symbol of a heritage I'd never known I possessed. My mother, I said, a new thought occurring to me. Could she be found? Brought here to explain why she left? Why she hid what I was? Victor's expression darkened. We've tried. After I learned of your existence, I sent scouts to your village hoping to speak with Lillian. They reported that she'd left shortly after you were taken, disappeared without a trace. A painful knot formed in my throat. She'd abandoned me twice then, once by trading me away, and again by fleeing, rather than facing the consequences. I see. I'm sorry, Victor said, and he seemed to mean it. I took another sip of my drink, letting the burn center me. If I stay? If I face the trial, and somehow survive it, what then? What would be my place here? Whatever you want it to be, Victor replied. You'd be a full member of the pack, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. You could train for any position that interests you, enforcer, healer, teacher for the young ones. And what about... I hesitated, uncertain how to phrase it. What about us? This compatibility you speak of? The corner of his mouth lifted in a half-smile. That would be entirely up to you. Compatibility doesn't mandate action, Elizabeth. It merely suggests possibility. I nodded, my decision crystallizing with surprising clarity. Then I'll stay. I'll face the trial. Relief flickered across Victor's features, quickly masked. You're sure? No, I admitted with a small laugh. I'm terrified, but running away won't give me answers about who I am, what I might become. Staying will. Victor reached across the space between us, his hand extended palm up. An offer, not a demand. After a moment's hesitation, I placed my hand in his. The now familiar current sparked between us, stronger than before, warming my skin and sending tremors up my arm. It's growing stronger, he observed, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. The connection. That's a good sign for your chances in the trial. Is it always like this? I asked. This electricity when we touch? Victor shook his head. I've never experienced it before you. It's rare, even among our kind. A sign of deep compatibility, beyond the physical. You mean like soulmates? The word felt foolish on my tongue. Too steeped in human romanticism for this wild, primal place. To my surprise, Victor didn't laugh or dismiss the notion. Something like that. We call it moon-bonded, two souls that align like the sun and moon in eclipse, each made more powerful by the other's presence. His fingers intertwined with mine. But such bonds must be chosen, Elizabeth. Embraced willingly by both. The intensity in his gaze made my heart race. There was desire there, certainly, but something else too. A loneliness that mirrored my own. A hope I hadn't expected to find in someone so seemingly invulnerable. I should rest, I said softly, reluctantly withdrawing my hand. If training begins tomorrow, I'll need my strength. Victor nodded, rising from his chair. Of course. He watched as I stood, his eyes tracking my movements with a predator's focus that, strangely, no longer frightened me. At the doorway to my bedroom, I paused, turning back to him. Victor, thank you for giving me a choice. Always, he replied, the single word carrying the weight of a vow. That night, I dreamed of running through moonlit forests, the earth soft beneath my feet, then my paws, as I raced alongside a massive black wolf with amber eyes. In the dream, I wasn't afraid. I was exhilarated, free in a way I'd never known, belonging in a way I'd always craved. I woke at dawn to find Victor already up, dressed in simple training clothes. Ready to begin? He asked, his expression serious, but his eyes holding a warmth that hadn't been there when we first met. I rose from the bed, my decision from the night before only strengthened by the morning light. Ready. The month passed in a blur of training, learning, and gradual acceptance. Each day, Victor worked with me tirelessly, teaching me pack history and customs in the mornings, then physical training in the afternoons. I learned to fight, to track by scent even with my limited human abilities, to move silently through the forest. Other pack members joined occasionally, Mira often, Elder Thomas sometimes, even a few of the younger werewolves who'd overcome their initial wariness. Serena watched from a distance, her hostility never fully abating, but transforming into something more like grudging curiosity as I improved under Victor's tutelage. Once, after I'd successfully disarmed one of the enforcers during combat training, I caught her almost smiling before she masked it with her usual disdain, and through it all, the connection between Victor and me deepened. We were careful, maintaining appropriate distance during training, but in the privacy of his quarters, our conversations grew longer, more personal. I learned of his childhood under a tyrannical father, of his determination to lead differently, to create a pack built on respect rather than fear. He learned of my dreams beyond the village, my love of poetry, my secret hope that there was more to life than I'd been told. Touch between us became both torment and solace, each contact sending that same electric current through us, growing stronger with each passing day. Yet neither of us pushed for more, aware of the power imbalance, the complexity of our situation. There would be time for such considerations after the trial, if I survived it. The night before the full moon, I stood on the balcony outside Victor's quarters, watching the nearly complete orb rise above the forest. Behind me, I heard his approach, his footsteps deliberately audible, a courtesy he'd begun extending once he realized how easily he could startle me otherwise. Nervous? He asked, coming to stand beside me at the railing. Terrified, I admitted, but ready, I think. As ready as I can be. Victor's hand covered mine where it rested on the stone. You've worked harder than anyone I've ever trained. Whatever happens tomorrow, know that you've earned my respect, and the respect of many in the pack." I turned to face him, studying the strong lines of his face, now so familiar to me. "And if I fail? If I die during the trial?" Pain flashed across his features. "You won't. But if I do," I pressed. "What then?" Victor's jaw tightened. "Then I will have lost something precious just as I was beginning to find it." The raw honesty in his voice stole my breath. "But it won't come to that. I'll be there, Elizabeth. I won't let you fall." In that moment, with the almost full moon shining down on us, and the promise of tomorrow's trial hanging between us, I made a decision. Rising on tiptoe, I pressed my lips to his. The effect was instantaneous. That electric current exploding into something more powerful, more consuming. Victor froze for a heartbeat, then responded with carefully restrained passion, his arms encircling me as if I were something infinitely precious. The kiss deepened, a month of tension and growing connection crystallizing into this single perfect moment. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Victor rested his forehead against mine. "You should know," he murmured, "that among our kind, such gestures are not taken lightly." "Good," I replied, surprising myself with my certainty, because I didn't offer it lightly. He smiled then, a true smile that transformed his usually serious face, making him look younger, almost carefree. "Then let it be a promise," he said softly. "A promise of what awaits after tomorrow." "After I pass the trial," I corrected, newfound confidence flowing through me. "After you pass the trial," he agreed. The next evening, as the full moon rose over Ravencrest, I stood at the edge of the ancient stone circle deep in the forest, where the trial would take place. The entire pack had gathered to witness, their faces solemn in the gathering dusk. Victor stood at the center of the circle, his expression grave, but his eyes never leaving mine, silently offering strength. As Elder Thomas began the ritual, calling upon ancient powers and pack bonds, I felt something stir within me, something that had been awakening gradually over the past month, growing stronger with each day spent in this place, with these people, with him. When the moment came to step into the circle and face whatever challenges the trial would bring, I did so without hesitation. The girl who had been sold by her parents to pay a debt was gone. In her place stood a woman who had chosen her path, who had found strength she never knew she possessed, and who had discovered that belonging sometimes comes in the most unexpected forms. As the trial began, and the ancient magic swirled around me, I caught Victor's gaze across the circle. The bond between us pulsed, stronger than ever, offering not just protection, but partnership. Whatever came next, wolf or human, life or death, I would face it on my own terms. And for the first time since leaving my village, I was truly, completely free.